There's this hidden problem facing the US economy, one that almost nobody is talking about. It feels like we've hit some kind of invisible ceiling on our growth, and you'll be surprised at just how low that ceiling actually is.
I mean, think about it. For decades, we were used to seeing the US economy grow at a pretty healthy clip, right? Like 3, sometimes even 4% a year. Well, it looks like that era is kind of over. Economists are now saying there's this new unspoken speed limit for the economy, and it's just 1.8%. And this isn't just a blip, a temporary dip. This is a structural ceiling. It's a fundamental limit on just how fast we can possibly grow.
So that's got to make you wonder, right? What's going on here? Why is this happening? And maybe more importantly, what does this actually mean for our future? The answers, well, you're not going to find them in a latest inflation report or what the Fed is doing. Nope, they're rooted in these deep, really slow-moving forces, things like demographics and the simple fact that our country is getting older.
Okay, to really get our heads around this, we have to look at the basic math behind the entire economy. And believe it or not, it all comes down to this surprisingly simple little formula. So let's dive in and break it down. So first things first, what do we even mean by economic growth? Well, it's pretty simple, really. It's just the increase in all the stuff, the goods and services that an economy produces. This is the engine, right? It's what drives prosperity, creates jobs, and gives us all a better standard of living. All right, and this right here, this is the absolute core of the whole problem. Economic growth, it only comes from two places. Two. First, the number of people who are actually working, that's your labor force growth. And second, how good they are at their jobs, how efficient they are, that's your productivity growth. So, it's just how many workers you have, plus how much each of those workers can produce. That's it. That is the entire formula for economic growth. Simple, right?
So when you look at that equation, here's where things get interesting. The problem isn't everywhere. For decades, that first part, our labor force, was growing at a nice, steady pace. But now, well, just look at the projection. That growth is about to completely collapse. It's like the first half of our growth engine is just falling off a cliff. Okay, so that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Why? Why is our labor force growth just cratering like this? Well, the answer is all about demographics. We have to talk about the fact that America as a nation is getting older. And honestly, it's happening a lot faster than most people realize.
And it really all starts with this one number, 1.6. What is that? Well, that's the US fertility rate right now. Now, just to keep a population stable, not even growing, just stable, you need a rate of about 2.1. So as you can see, we are way below that number. And what that means, in simple terms, is that we have way fewer young people coming into the workforce to replace the folks who are leaving. So this creates this kind of historic imbalance. You can think of it like a funnel, the workforce funnel. At the top, you've got the shrinking number of young people pouring in. But at the bottom, you have this absolutely massive wave of baby boomers flowing out into retirement, faster than ever before. So for the first time in modern history, we literally have more people leaving the workforce every year than joining it. The funnel is emptying out.
Now, you might be thinking, hold on a second, aren't people just choosing not to work these days? And, that's a fair question, but the reality is a whole lot more complicated than just that. The truth is, the percentage of Americans who are either working or even looking for a job is near historic lows. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. The biggest one, for sure, is the aging population and all those early retirements we talked about. But it's not just that. We're also seeing more people on disability. We've got this huge mismatch between the skills people have and the jobs that are actually out there. And yeah, there are still some lingering effects from the pandemic that just push some people out of the workforce for good. Let's just try to put this into perspective for a second. By 2030, which is just around the corner, 1 out of every 5 Americans will be over the age of 65. 1 in 5. I mean, just stop and think about what that really means. It means lower productivity overall. It means massive, and I mean massive, increases in what the government has to spend on things like Social Security and Medicare, and it means fewer and fewer workers paying the taxes to support that whole system.
So, for pretty much its entire history, America had this secret weapon, this powerful tool to fight back against these exact kinds of trends. You could even call it our demographic superpower. But that tool isn't really working like it used to. And that brings us to the immigration X factor. I mean, for generations, immigration was the engine of American growth. Full stop. Immigrants filled our factories, they built our cities, they sparked these incredible waves of innovation. It was our ace in the hole, the thing that guaranteed we always had a young, growing, and ambitious workforce. But that world is kind of fading away. The reality today is a whole lot different. We have policies that are getting more and more restrictive. We're not bringing in the high-skilled immigrants we desperately need to compete on a global scale. And here's the bottom line, the really crucial point. If you take away immigration, U.S. population growth, and by extension, our labor force growth is basically flat. We're talking near zero. So it feels like we're just running straight into a demographic wall, one that puts a hard cap on our economic growth. So the huge question now is, can we defy the math? Is there any way for us to break through this ceiling? Okay, let's go back to that simple formula, right? Let's say we're super optimistic. Let's say awesome new tech like AI gives us a really strong productivity boost, maybe 1.4%. Sounds great, right? But the math is just unforgiving. If our labor growth is barely crawling along at 0.4%, you add those two together and we are still stuck at that 1.8% ceiling. So productivity alone, it's just not going to be enough to save us. So what's the solution? What can we actually do about this? Well, there are a few paths forward, but let's be honest, every single one of them is politically really, really tough. We could, for example, increase high-skilled immigration to get more workers in the door. We could try to boost participation with better policies for things like childcare or job retraining. We could go all in on automation and AI to make every single worker we have way more productive. We could even talk about gradually changing retirement ages, or expanding things like vocational and STEM education to fill those key skill gaps. These are basically the levers we have to pull, but man, pulling any one of them is going to require some serious political courage. And really, this quote it nails the new American reality perfectly. So often, we hear the debate framed around government spending or the national debt, right? But the real problem, the fundamental constraint on our future, it's not about money. It's about people. The United States is not running out of money. It's running out of workers. And until we figure out a way to solve that problem, that 1.8% number, it's not just some economist's prediction. It's a mathematical ceiling.